Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So today we are going to take a look at the Transformers Legacy Evolution Voyager class Leo Prime. Let's start off by taking a look at the packaging and then we'll get into the review. So of course we have Transformers inside. We have the Maximal Leo Prime with a really cool Maximal symbol. We have the Legacy Evolution logo, a really cool artwork shot of Leo Prime in his line mode, an open window displaying the figure in the packaging. If we do flip to the top, there's the QR code, so if you do scan that, it will show his stats. There's also another Legacy Evolution logo there. If you do flip to the side, there's two really cool artwork shots, one a really cool kind of running battle pose and a close-up of his face. I think that looks super cool. On the back, he transforms in 35 steps. There's several really cool product shots. Here's one of the robot, one of the lion, and there's two of the really cool Evo Fusion gimmick, which I will show in this review. On the final side, we do have half of the Legacy Evolution artwork. So if you do get Voyager Tarn, which I do have in my collection, so the review should be up on the channel right now, or it could be up very, very soon. So if you do get another figure like that, you can put both boxes together and complete the Legacy Evolution artwork, which I think is a really cool gimmick or kind of feature that they put with the boxes, which I really do like. And that is pretty much it for the packaging, so let's now get into the review. Here we have Leo Prime in his line mode. Let's start off by taking a look at the details, starting at the very front with that face and heads. There is actually quite a bit of talk about this, so a lot of people really don't like the look and the design of this face. A lot of people are hoping it was going to look more like the box art where it's super cool and ferocious. Unfortunately, it does not, but personally, me, it really doesn't bother me that much. I think probably my biggest complaint is the eyes. It's just one solid color, so he looks semi-possessed. I think if they put like a little black dot there, it would look a little bit better. It's kind of like Kingdom Cheetor all over again. If you have that figure, his eyes were one solid color, so he looked kind of like a possessed cheetah. It looks super weird, but everything else, I actually really do like the design of the nose and the mouth. There's some really cool teeth detailing. The nose is done in black, and the whole color, the whole white for the face, really nice glossy white. I think that looks pretty cool. As for the design of the mane, I think they did an amazing job with. There's some really cool sculpted and flowing fur. There's actually some sculpted in ears, and there's actually some metallic orange in the back of the mane, and I really do like how it seamlessly wraps around the head and actually around the leg. I think that looks super cool. Really good job there. As for the front paws or legs, some really cool sculpted in knuckles, some really nice kind of gold orange for the nails, very sharp and menacing looking. And since this is a Beast Wars inspired character, they actually took the same design cues from Kingdom, and they actually have some texturing on this figure. So there's some rough texturing on the legs, on the main body, and of course the back legs as well, which is really cool to see. As for the main body, pretty plain, just done in white. And another huge positive is usually with some Beast Wars characters, some Kingdom figures, typically there is some sacrifices or some compromises. So sometimes there is a little bit of robot mode cable sticking out in the Beast mode. As you can see, there is some sticking out at the back of the legs, but honestly, that is not that bad. There is some figures that are way worse. On the bottom, you can see a little bit there, but honestly, the bottom doesn't matter to me that much. The front view and side view, I think, are pretty seamless, very cohesive, and look very, very cool. As for the back legs, overall, pretty similar to the front. I think the paw is just slightly bigger, but the design, the knuckles, the nails overall are pretty similar. And if you can see in the back, again, there is a little bit of cable sticking out, which that really doesn't bother me that much. I actually think it's kind of cool how there's a merge of the robot and the Beast mode peeking through. That actually looks kind of cool. The tail overall pretty plain, just done in orange. You can actually see there's a little bit of fur sticking out at this tip there, which is quite nice. Unfortunately, it is fixed in a specific position. There's pretty much zero articulation in the tail, which I'd say probably is the biggest complaint of the articulation for this figure. I think they really could have put in like a ball joint or a hinge there, and that would be a lot better. But that is it for details. Let's now get down to articulation. So unfortunately, the head is fixed into place, which I was kind of expecting that buying this figure. I already knew. I watched several reviews, so I knew that was going to be the way it was, and really nothing you can do about that. As for the paws themselves, there is a hinge forward and back. There's also a swivel in and out. Unfortunately, this whole piece here does have a tendency to untap. And I think they probably could have put in a hinge for the paw to like move up and down. I think that would have been really good. As for the back legs, there is a swivel at the top, a hinge out to the side. Of course, these are the robot mode legs, so there is quite a bit of articulation here. There is also a swivel at the paw itself and an ankle pivot in, which is really nice to see. And of course a hinge back and forth. And if you want to, there is a whole hinge here, so if you untab this part, you can get some more articulation, but it will of course kind of ruin the cohesive look of the back leg. And for one final piece, the head or the mouth can open and close, and I guess if you want to, you can count the tail. It can slightly move back and forth, which that hinge is actually really due to transformation. So if you want to count that, you can. that is it for articulation. I think there's a few areas that they really could have done a lot better, especially the tail, the whole articulation of the head. That pretty much would have had to redesign the whole figure because the transformation really locks the head in tight. So that would have to change the entire figure. So the tail, I think they could have easily changed, and the paw, having a hinge at the paw up and down, I think they definitely could have done as well. But that is it for articulation. So let's now get down to a few comparisons, then accessories. So first up, here he is with another Beast Wars character. I thought I'd compare him to Optimus Primal. And I think they look pretty cool next to each other. Overall, the Beast Wars characters, the Kingdom figures, I think they did a really good job with that. I'm hoping they do some more Crossman figures for maybe a Rampage or Depth Charge and Legacy Evolution. That would be absolutely amazing. But they do look pretty cool next to each other. As you can see, they definitely recreated the fur effect and the rough effect from Kingdom to Legacy Evolution. I think that's pretty cool. And now for one final comparison. Here he is with Legacy Evolution Voyager class Tarn. And overall, the Voyager classes for Wave 1 of Legacy Evolution have been pretty good, in my opinion. Unfortunately, no leader for this wave. Maybe it's just coming a little bit late, but rumor is we might possibly get a leader Armada Megatron, which I would really like to see. That'd be super cool. But they overall do look pretty cool next to each other. And that's pretty much it for that comparison. So let's now get down to the accessories. He does come with 4. He comes with 2 sets of 2 different blasters. So these little ones, which you can store up actually inside of his main, which is super cool to see. And of course, I'll cover the details and the other ways you can store them in his robot mode after transformation. So how these store is, there is a port and there is a peg right there. So you just plug that into place just like that, which I actually really do like the storage. What's actually super cool is you can keep these in his main. You do not have to take them out for transformation. It's perfectly fine to keep them in there, which I actually really do like that. So this one just goes on the other side just like that. Just plug that into place. So there we have those up top, which I really do like that. That looks pretty cool. And if you were interested, all 4 blasters are blast piece compatible. As for the last 2, these just store on the side. So there is a tab, and what you have to do is actually flip out this panel like that. So there is actually a tab and there is a port there. So weird enough is how these tabbing is, there is a port and there is a tab. I think it would have been better if this was a port instead of a tab. As you can see, it's a little bit odd that they did that. I'm not really sure why, but these just kind of slide into place. It does require a little bit of force to get them in there, just to line them up like that. And there we go. There's one side all done. And you just flip to the other side and store it just like that. Just get this other one, tab this into place like that. And there we have the weapon storage for this mode. So there is actually a second way you can store these 2 right here. You can actually put them in the back. I'll show that when it's in the robot mode, because if I wanted to show you now, you'd pretty much have to untab this entire back section, which is a lot of work. So it's a lot more easy to show you and access that when he is in his robot mode. As for the top 2 blasters, this is the only way you can store them in this specific mode. But I actually really do like this look. It's the Evil Fusion gimmick for this mode. It actually looks really crazy and nuts. A really heavily armored land mode, which I really do like. But that is pretty much it for the accessories, the details, comparisons, and this line mode. So let's now get down to transformation into the robot mode. Now for transformation into the robot mode, what you're going to do is flip these panels out, and they're tabbed by a port and tab right there. You can then get the leg, hinge this back just like that, and then disconnect the entire shoulder from the main body. So there's a tab and there's a slot on the inside of this piece. Do the same thing on the other side. So just flip this piece out just like that. So you can then get the leg, hinge this back, and then disconnect it from the main body. Of course, there is a tab and slot on the inside. Then you're actually going to go to the back of the figure. You can get this panel, hinge this up, disconnect this whole back piece as well. You can then flip in the tail. And how this is there is a whole slot section on the inside, and that just keeps it in place just like that. Then what you're going to want to do is hinge this entire leg assembly down and into place just like that. You can then use the swivel this forward. Do the same thing on your leg. Just hinge this down and swivel that forward. You can then bring out the heel spur like that. Bring out the heel spur. And then the last step for the leg is you just use the swivel at the ankle. Swivel that forward and do the same thing on our sides. Just use that swivel and swivel that forward, and there we have the legs all done. Just straighten them out like that, and just put them in whatever pose you want, and then just make sure all these pieces are collapsed like that. And we can just have him stand up a little bit like that. And let's now work on the top half. Now what you're going to do is disconnect the entire arm from the main head section. So just separate all this like that. And how this was tabbed into places, there is a slot right there and a tab right there. And there's 2 tabs and 2 slots. You're just going to bring that down. Do the same thing on our side, just bring that down. And then what you're going to do is open up this whole compartment. You can open the head, just bring this out like that. And then you can get this piece rotated around. And there is 2 slots, 2 tabs that will tab back into place like that. And then you're going to bring this down. You can bring the entire animal legs out like that. And these 2 pieces here will actually form the chest. So there's 2 slots, 2 tabs, and that will form the chest. So just bring these in. And occasionally this whole little flap will bring out, you just close it up like that. These will tab together like that. And then you can bring the arm forward like that. Just rotate it forward. You can bring the hand out. And as for the animal shoulder piece, just bring this out. Fold this up just like that. This little piece here will tab back into place, so there is a port and a tab. I just folded it out just to get some added clearance. And there we have one arm all done. Do the same thing on your side, so just use that swivel at the bicep, hinge this forward, flip the hand out, make sure this is tabbed back into place if not already. Hinge this like that, get the little animal leg, flip this up just like that, and there we have the arms all done. Just kind of position them however you wish. Like that. Sometimes he's a bit fiddly. I do apologize if he's moving around too much. He's sometimes a bit hard to handle. And now for this entire top portion, you're going to just get this entire assembly here. And there's actually a whole rotation or like a hinge that's just going to hinge all this stuff like that. So if you can see, there's a whole hinge or kind of mechanism that's going to hinge this stuff around. It's a bit hard. You have to have quite a bit of clearance. Just hinge all this stuff like that. And there we go. This piece stays just like that. So you can just push that down like that. And this whole section here will become the shoulder. And this lion head will become the other shoulder. So just bring this over top. This will just kind of fall into place. This will just kind of collapse over there. And if you just straighten a few things out, there we have Leo Prime in his lion mode. Let's take a look at the details. Here we have Leo Prime in his robot mode. Let's start off by taking a look at the details. Starting at the very top with the head sculpt. Definitely a very classic Optimus Prime head sculpt there. Some really nice silver for the battle mask, some yellow for the eyes, some really nice blue for the main helmet section with some really nice silver for the crest, and these 2 little antenna pieces. I think that looks really cool. Of course, we have the entire lion head for one shoulder, which is super cool. Again, really nice sculpt work of the ears, really cool kind of flowing fur, and of course, we do have that lion face from before. As for the arms, some nice red, some gray and blue for the hands. I actually really do like this chest. Those look super cool. Of course, we have a really classic Maximal symbol done in white with a white circle around it. Some really cool silver for the abs or the stomach, and some blue on the other side. I actually really do like how it's not symmetrical on both sides. And there's some really cool technical and mechanical detailing there, which is super cool. Some silver dots there, which is quite cool. And the crotch is actually quite detailed. Some really nice gunmetal gray, some yellow, and some blue. As for the top of the legs, some really nice whites. These are actually, of course, the hind legs, the back legs of the beast mode. So I actually really just like how the feet are some really cool beast legs. That's actually really cool. We have the huge talons or nails done that nice orange kind of gold. And some nice gunmetal gray and red and blue. And again, some texturing from before from the beast mode, which I actually really like how you can still see that in this mode. And of course, the other shoulder is done a little bit differently. It's the entire back of the tail of the beast mode, which is there, which is pretty cool. On the back, overall, pretty plain. Yes, he does have quite a bit of kibble, so I do apologize if I fiddle with him a little bit because there is quite a few pieces on him, so he's a bit hard to handle at sometimes, but overall the design of him, I am actually quite impressed. He's a very cool looking figure. Sometimes hard to stand, so you might have to mess around with him a little bit to get him in a cool pose, but overall, very impressive detail-wise. Let's now get down to articulation, so the head can look up and down. Of course, look side to side. As for the arm, it can move out and in. There is a bicep rotation and elbow bend. Unfortunately, no wrist rotation. As for the waist rotation, I'm not sure if this is just on my copy, but it is so tight. So there is a full waist rotation, but it is incredibly tight on my copy, so I'm going to be a little careful with that. As for the legs, it can kick that far out, that far forward, that far back. There is also a swivel, a knee bend. There is also another swivel at the ankle, but that's really due to transformation. There is a very good ankle pivot, and that is pretty much it for the articulation. I'd say probably the only thing that is missing is the wrist rotation, but the only reason why that is not included is really due to transformation, because you do fold in the hands, so I can easily pass that. There's some other things I guess you could count as articulation. Of course, the line mouth, you can have it open or closed, and there's a few pieces that you can kind of maneuver however you wish. But that is pretty much it for articulation. I'd say it's overall pretty good. Maybe the waist rotation could be a little bit looser. That's an odd thing to say. Usually we want the joints tighter, but in this situation, I would say it could be a little bit looser. But let's now get down to the features and accessories. The first feature is you can actually open up this whole panel here, and you can reveal the matrix chamber, which is actually super cool. So apparently this is actually blast piece compatible. So if you wanted to, you could have a really cool blue blast piece. So it's like illuminating from his chest if you want to, which is pretty cool. And that's quite nice, and this just tabs back into place like that. I typically prefer it to be closed. As for his next accessories, it's those 4 blasters. You can actually store these in several different ways. So the first way is kind of like the Evo Fusion gimmick in the line mode. So you can store it on the line mode again, but slightly different. So first you're going to want to open this. The 2 blasters on this section do stay the same, but the longer ones are in a different position. So you just get these little ones. I'm going to quickly put them on because I did show it before. There's a port and a peg, so you just plug those up top just like that. Do the same thing on the other ports, just plug that one in. As for the last 2, of course, it's in a different position because those pieces that I did use from before in the line mode are actually on his arms now, so they're in a different position. So there's a tab and slots, and you just tab those into place. I think this definitely makes more sense because before it was a port, so it really doesn't tab in that secure. So you just go to the back and tab it on the other side. And unfortunately, of course, in this mode, since the lion head is on his shoulder, this other one is on his back, so it's not as seen as well as before. But there we have the first way you can store the accessories, which I think is pretty cool. I actually really like how all the weapons are just on one side, so he is definitely well armed on one of his shoulders. I think that looks really cool in my opinion. And if you want to, again, you can fully easily collapse this into place if you want to, which is really nice. And of course, these 2 can stay there if you want to, which is pretty cool. As for his Evo Fusion gimmick, you just take all these weapons off, close this piece up, take these off as well, just like that. As for his Evo Fusion gimmick, you're going to go to the back. You can get these little paws here. You're going to flip these out and forward. You can actually bring out this whole blade piece, and you're going to flip this forward, and it'll actually go forward, so you can use this really cool like a dagger blade, which I think is so crazy and cool. So you get the other one, and then you're going to bring out that blade, bring it out like that. And then what you're going to do is bring out these pieces like this, just untab them from the arms, flip those forward, and how this was tabbed into place is there is a tab there and a slot right there. Do the same thing on the other arm, just like that. As you can see, there is a lot of pieces on his arms. So where the accessories go is these 2 little ones will go in his hands. So there is a peg and a ports. Just plug that into his hands. Get the other one, plug it into his hands, just like that. As for these last 2, they actually use that same connection from the line mode, so there's that same whole port and tab, so you just plug these in there just like that. Do the same thing on the other one. Just tab them in like that. And again, he can be a little bit fiddly sometimes. Sometimes it just takes a little bit more work. And there we have the Evo Fusion gimmick, which I think this looks absolutely insane. You got tons of weapons, some really cool daggers, and I actually really do like this look. This looks so crazy. Again, a little bit fiddly to pose around because there's quite a bit of kibble and stuff on him, so you have to work with him a little bit. But overall, I think that looks pretty cool in my opinion. So there is actually a third way you can store these bigger ones. These little ones, that's the only other way you can store them. But as for these little ones, the longer ones, you can actually store them on the back. So if you do lift up this panel, there is a slot and a tab, and that will actually match with this tab and slot. So it's a bit hard to actually align it up. Sometimes I would just suggest to put it on the ground, but you can just tab both of them back there if you want to. I'm just going to show it on one because I probably will put it back in his hand in just a sec, but that's the third way you can store them on the back if you want to, if you just want less weapons around, which is actually kind of a nice option. So I'm just going to take that off, just put this on his back again. And I'm going to put that back into place. I actually kind of want him in his Evo Fusion mode for the comparisons because I think this looks really cool. So I'm just going to tab this back there. And let's now get down to a few comparisons. So here he is with another Maximal. Here he is with Optimus Primal. Just make his feet normal. There we go. And there we have them both together. I think they look pretty cool. Definitely really good Maximals side by side. And now for another comparison, another Legacy Evolution comparison. Here he is with Hotshot, which his review should be on the channel right now, or should be up very soon. And size-wise, he's actually a pretty decently sized Voyager. And now for one final deluxe comparison, here he is with Scraphook. And they do look pretty cool next to each other. And that is pretty much it for the comparisons and this robot mode. Overall, really like this Evo Fusion gimmick and the design of this figure. Let's now get down to the final thoughts. Now for the final thoughts for the Transformers Legacy Evolution Voyager class Leo Prime. Starting in the robot mode, I really do like the design of the head sculpt. Very classic to Optimus Prime. I also really like the addition of the yellow eyes. It's quite different. I like the huge line head on his shoulder. That's actually super cool to see. And of course, the other shoulder is quite different. It's the entire back of the line, his tail, which is really cool. And the huge claws on his back, which actually can become really cool, like blades or huge knives sticking out of his arms. I really like that feature as well. And of course, the chest, I actually really like how it's not symmetrical. There's a Maximal symbol on one side, and there's some really cool mechanical details on the other side. I really like the crotch. It's actually detailed really nicely. There's some yellow, some blue, some gunmetal gray, and the whole ab and stomach region is actually really cool as well. There's some silver, some blue, some gunmetal gray as well, and the legs actually acting as some really cool beast feet is actually super cool as well. There's some gunmetal gray, the huge nails as the feet. I really do like that. That's super cool. Unfortunately, since they actually also act as the beast legs, sometimes there's a little bit of ugliness on the sides. You can see some of the joints and the swivel sections, which is a little bit ugly, but overall I can easily pass on that. You do have to realize there's actually quite a bit of kibble on this figure because of course we have the huge lion head, there's some stuff on the back, so he's a little bit fiddly of a figure, I do have to admit. Sometimes he's kind of hard to pose and sometimes he's a bit hard to stand, so there's a few things that are compromised, and unfortunately I do have one major complaint. The entire back panel here, I've looked in the instructions constantly, I've seen a lot of reviews, and I have not found a way you can actually tab it in. There's no place where it just locks into place, which is a bit unfortunate, because there is actually 4 tabs. There's 2 tabs on each side on that piece that are used for the beast mode that I really think they could have used for this mode as well for it to be secure in place. Again, I could be missing something, but how it came was like that. It was not tabbed into place. So that's a bit unfortunate. But overall, I really do like the design of this robot mode. And again, the Evo Fusion gimmick is super cool. You bring these little beast mode legs from the back. They become really cool knives. You put all the blasters in his hands and it's just so crazy. You can also store them in several different ways. You can put all of them on the lion head, which is pretty cool. Kind of similar to the way you do it in the beast mode, which is pretty cool. And there's actually a third way you can store the longer two. You can actually put them on that backpack piece, which is kind of nice if you don't want him to be holding a ton of weapons. I actually like that option. Now for articulation, I'm actually pretty well, it's actually pretty good. I was thinking it was going to be really limited because, again, there's quite a bit of stuff on him. I was thinking it's going to be really restricting. He has a really good waist rotation, actually a really tight one on that. So hopefully other people's copies are a little bit looser because it's really, really stiff, which I guess some people could consider a good thing. Everything else is pretty normal. Good head articulation. You can actually still maneuver the arms even though there's the huge line head there. Of course, there's a bicep rotation, elbow bends, past 90. Unfortunately, there is no wrist rotation, but I can easily pass that because it's a very complex, messy transformation. I mean, you have to transform it into a lion, so you have to expect, of course, that you're going to do something with the hands. So though no wrist rotation, I can easily pass on. There's actually pretty good rotation in the legs because, of course, those become the animal hind legs. So you there's actually quite a bit of swivels, quite a bit of hinges. You can do a full splits, really good kick forward and back, so you can get them in some really cool poses. Now for accessories, I do have to say, I do like how you can store them in several different ways, but I do think they might have gone a little bit cheap and kind of easy, because it is just 4 very similar blasters. You know, there's 2 small ones, 2 big ones. The sculpting of them is very similar, just they're a little bit bigger than the other. Some of them are small, some of them are big, so I think maybe they kind of got a little cheap. It would have been nice maybe if they gave him a sword. That might have not been accurate to how he was in the show, but I think they could have given us something better because it's pretty cheap as it is, because it's just pretty much 4 of the same blaster over and over again. But the way you use them is cool, I do have to admit. Now for transformation, I would have to say it is kind of fiddly if you watch the whole transformation segment. I know some people skip them. but if you did, you can see it is kind of messy. It's a little bit fiddly at times, sometimes it's quite messy. The transformation of the legs, I think, is pretty easy. I think anyone can get that. But of the arms and the whole main top portion or front portion of the line can be a bit messy at times, and sometimes hard to film. So I do apologize if it was messy and hard to follow, because it's kind of hard to do recording. But I do really like the line mode. Yes, people are complaining about the line face. It's not the best. A lot of people were hoping it was going to look exactly like the box art. I would have liked that too, but really my only problem is the eyes, because it's just one solid color. So his eyes do look like he's kind of possessed. So if they put like a black dot for like his iris, I think that would have been a little bit better. But the structure of the face, like the whole white and the nose and the mouth, I actually really do like. It's also nice how you can open his mouth. That's really cool. And the whole sculpt of the mane is amazing. That's one really cool detail that I think they definitely nailed. The really cool wavy fur texture they did. The design, I actually really do like the metallic kind of orange gold they used for the nails and the mane itself. That actually is super cool. The articulation actually isn't that bad. Unfortunately, there is no rotation at the head. It's pretty secured into place because you actually do put the arms inside the head, so it's pretty locked into place. Again, you can't open the mouth, which is really nice. Also, I wouldn't say I'm that disappointed, because going into this, I knew he did not have a ball joint or any rotation at the head. I watched several reviews, so I was kind of prepared. Would I have liked some movement in the head? Yes, but I was kind of prepared. Everything else is pretty good, of course. Since the hind legs are the robot mode legs, you can definitely put some pretty cool poses. I definitely think they could have put a hinge at the paw, because you know, you could put him in some more expressive poses. You could hinge the paw, you know, forward and back, and do some really cool like running or jumping poses. I think that would have been nice. But everything else is pretty good. I think he's a solid figure. I probably do like Tarn more. I think of the Voyagers, Tarn is a better Voyager between the two, but I definitely suggest to get this one. Just do be aware, there is some sacrifices. He does have quite a bit of kibble. I mean, he does have to turn into a lion. That's probably quite a bit easier than getting a figure and transforming it into a tank. I do hope you enjoyed this review. Hopefully you were able to follow along with the transformation. I know it's very messy and kind of fiddly. I do apologize about that. It's just kind of a complex and fiddly character. And let me know what you think of this figure in the comment section down below. Will you be picking it up? Do you like this figure? Also, what do you think about the line face? Are you kind of like me, where it's just okay, or are you one of those people who just despises it altogether? Let me know in the comment section down below. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.